The Chinese are about to embark on some 2 billion trips this Lunar New Year. Some, or possibly many of them, will be carrying the coronavirus with them. Remember, this is the event that sparked the first mass spreading of COVID-19 from Wuhan. These are the latest scenes from an emergency ward of a hospital in Shanghai, and it could get worse. Epidemiologists say some parts of the countryside haven't yet had COVID outbreaks. But with the travel rush later this month, the disease will find its way into every corner of the country. Virologist Julian Tang is an honorary associate professor of respiratory sciences. He joins us from Leicester in the UK. We've got a massive discrepancy in official figures and independent projections of daily deaths in China right now since zero COVID was dropped last month. The World Health Organization says deaths are being underreported. How dangerous is the virus right now for the Chinese?
So this virus has been around in other countries elsewhere globally. The risk to China is really in the vulnerable population that hasn't been yet vaccinated with a very effective vaccine. The one they've rolled out in China, we know from previous studies, shows relatively low efficacy, probably around 50 to 60% compared to, say, 80 to 90 for the Pfizer vaccine. But of course, the virus has mutated far beyond these original vaccines. So the virus is not going to be prevented from transmitting, but a better vaccine would prevent more severe disease.
And you predicted Omicron would be less severe and more infectious. How do you see the virus now mutating or moving ahead once it spreads around the world again?
Well, it's doing exactly what I predicted. So even data from the US and Europe and elsewhere show the virus is actually evading current immunity from natural previous vaccination. But it's not causing more severe disease in those countries which have been well vaccinated, even with the mRNA vaccines that work very well. The problem, again, is if you have more cases due to high transmissibility, you'll get more severe disease and more deaths, particularly in those who are poorly vaccinated or with low vaccination rates or with a vaccine that doesn't work very well.
Well, the vaccination rate isn't that good amongst the elderly in China, is it?
No, and there are some cultural issues around that. I know from friends and colleagues in Hong Kong where the elderly are more suspicious of the vaccine than, say, Westerners are, and that may be causing that low uptake of the vaccine in China.
And on the topic of new variants, the WHO says the Chinese COVID data shows no new variant. Is that a big sigh of relief for virologists, for us as well?
Well, yes, but that's not that surprising. This virus knows no borders. It's been transmitting very quickly across the world, even from the Alpha variant and then along with Delta and now Omicron, which is even more transmissible. But luckily, it's less severe. So I'm not that worried about the virus per se for the rest of the world. I just hope that the vulnerable people in China can get a good enough vaccine to prevent severe disease and death there.
Can you tell us, does China, in your opinion, have the outbreak under control?
Well, I mean, the rest of the world doesn't have the outbreak under control either. They're just living with it. So I think that's a relative comparison. I think what's happening in China is that because they've delayed so long in getting a good, effective vaccine into their population, the virus has spread well beyond the capabilities of even the better mRNA vaccines in the West to be controlled by those vaccines. So they're seeing a kind of double whammy with a delayed vaccination coverage with a highly effective vaccine, plus the ongoing mutation in Omicron evading these vaccine immunities.
And just tell me again, you mentioned you have colleagues and acquaintances or relatives in Hong Kong. How observant and stringent do Hong Kongers need to be right at this time with Lunar New Year coming up?
I think the Hong Kongers are very well primed for this. They know that borders are opening this weekend. Masking is the norm there. But luckily, so far, the variants in China are very similar to those circulating elsewhere. So I don't think that's going to be a major issue. But they may get people coming in across the border, falling sick in Hong Kong if they have vulnerabilities, and then perhaps putting more burden on the Hong Kong healthcare system there.
Okay, virologist Julian Tang, thank you so much for the insights, and we really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.